Republican Congressman Mike McCall, he says, look, the Secret Service needs to reconsider when the president and the vice president should make appearances together. Watch.
The thing that really takeaway I got was that the line of succession. You had the president and the vice president at the head table, both of them together, and the Speaker of the House. Had an explosive device gone off, you would have knocked out the president, vice president, speaker, the three in line of succession. I think the Secret Service needs to reconsider having both the president and vice president together, like something like that, you know. Chuck Grassley would be the president had they all been taken out.
Extraordinary. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich joins me now. Should we have joint appearances or cut them out completely?
No, we ought to have joint appearances, and we ought to expect the Secret Service to figure out how to protect them. We've now had, with Trump, three people who are basically nuts. We have not had, thank God, a serious effort by the Iranians, and they might have an IED. But the fact is, the president and the vice president work in the same building, down the hall from each other. And we have to say that we want a Secret Service capable of protecting them, and not capriciously. But I don't think we can adopt rules that are so weird that you don't have your top two people in the same room, or for that matter, Speaker Mike Johnson, who was in fact third in line of succession.
What's your response to the Democrats' rhetoric and TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, which seems to have played quite a role in these attacks on Trump? Is it ever going to go away?
No, it's not going to go away until they're finally defeated. The left wing of the Democratic Party, and I have to say that I think that Norah O'Donnell last night was beyond despicable in using the language of the would-be killer. I mean, you can't imagine anything dumber than to take the guy who wants publicity, use his words, and then ask him of the president, which I thought was one of the truly low points in modern television news. But the Democrats are where they are. They are basically opposed to the American people. Look at their position on voting registration and requiring you to prove who you are. They're against it. 85% of the country's for it. Look at their candidate for governor in California, who actually wants to use tax money to bring back everybody who's been deported by ICE. I mean, I can't imagine a position further away from the American people than the candidate in California. Look again and again, whether it's on issues that are social policy, issues of taxation. Every Democrat in both the House and the Senate voted for the largest tax increase in American history. And I think they rely on the teachers union, the machine, very wealthy left-wingers to survive, while they are basically opposed to the American people.
So why are President Trump's approval ratings down and falling? I mean, if the Democrats are doing all of this and saying all of these things out there in public and opposing popular policies, why is Trump's approval down? I don't get that.
Well, sure. There are two obvious big things. One is that we have not solved the affordability problem, and if anything, with the rising gasoline prices, which people feel directly, that's sort of a policy production failure. And second, Trump, to his credit, I think made the decision, particularly after almost being killed in Butler, when he was truly saved in a providential manner, and had he turned 1 second later, he would have been dead. I think he concluded God wanted him to do the best he could at doing what's right, not doing what's popular. So he's taking on the Iranian dictatorship, which has been at war with the United States for 47 years. That's not a popular position, but it may be historically as important as Lincoln or Washington in doing what history demands, which is stopping our mortal enemy from getting nuclear weapons and missiles to literally destroy our cities. Now, the problem you have is the liberal media will never give Trump any credit, and the Democrats would rather lose Boston or San Francisco or Philadelphia than concede that Trump is correct to stop the Iranians. I mean, I think we're in a very strange period where you have a party and frankly, most of the liberal news media that have just lost their heads.
Yeah.
By the way, I will tell you that as somebody who's done a lot of campaigns over a lot of years, the Republicans are better than even, likely to win this fall. The real campaign will begin around the 4th of July. And George H.W. Bush was behind by 19 points against Dukakis in May and beat him by 8. So every fourth American switched. I am very confident that when we get to the real campaign, the Democrats are going to melt very rapidly.
I'm going to leave it right there. Newt Gingrich, always a pleasure. Come and see us again soon. Thank you, sir.